Welcome to the College Application Workshops presented by the University of Notre Dame Undergraduate Admissions Counseling staff and team. We're thrilled to have you here, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. If you have any questions during the presentation, we encourage you to ask those questions in the chat. We'll answer your questions during the Q&A portion of the session. Thanks for being here. We'll get started in just a few moments.
Good afternoon. Welcome to today's College Application Workshop, How to Afford Your College Education. My name is Matt Biergans. I'm an Associate Director of Financial Aid here at Notre Dame, and I'm also a graduate of Notre Dame, class of 1997. Before we begin and go forward, I just want to remind people that this webinar is being recorded, and if you want to review it sometime in the future, you're welcome to visit Notre Dame Admissions website, and the link will be there for you to see it again. Now, let us get started. I want to introduce Mary Nucciarone. Mary is the Director of Financial Aid here at Notre Dame.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join Matt and me today. We're looking forward to sharing information with you about paying for college, the financial aid application process, talking a little bit, you can see the agenda here, what's the value of a Notre Dame education, especially the application process. I want to talk a little bit about need-based financial aid and our scholarships. So kind of a comprehensive overview of what our programs are here. And of course, we want to get to you more about your specific questions, but hopefully these topics will help to demythify or make the process a little more understanding. I want to start talking about the value of Notre Dame education. So there's various tools that families use, things like the education scorecard. So why would you look at something like that? Well, that scorecard talks a lot about statistics. So things like graduation rates. If we're a four-year school, we want to see how many people are graduating within that four-year period, because part of the cost is making sure that you're not spending extra time to complete a four-year degree because maybe classes aren't available. Retention rates is another thing that I like to suggest to families that they look at. How many students are coming back from freshman year to sophomore year? And I look at that because to me, it suggests what satisfaction might be. So are students getting the support that they need? Are they finding the campus life engaging? Is the academic a good fit for them? And what are the retention rates then throughout the time at the institution? Again, at Notre Dame, our retention rates all across the 4 years are very, very high, some of the best in the country. Then again, I think another piece, many families are looking at outcomes as wages. And I do think that is an important part, is the wage factor. But I also think that there are many other things that families need to be looking at. Things like graduation rates and admission then into graduate or law school, if that's something, maybe medical school. And I think also, has the student been educated, body, mind, spirit? I think that's an outcome too. And so I think at Notre Dame, I am not an alum. Matt shared that he is an alum. My husband is a Notre Dame alum. And I can honestly say I find Notre Dame alums, the community here, and again, it may sound hokey or whatever, but there is really a specialness to the Notre Dame community that I don't think that you find in many other places, if any, in the college experience. The final publication I have listed there is called Education Pay. And that is a publication by the College Board that you know probably more for the SAT or AP or, again, College Search. And it really is a good publication that talks about just education in general. What should students expect from an outcome of their college education? So those would be just some suggestions that I offer to you in terms of value. In terms of applying for financial aid, the first piece of advice that I would give anyone And again, I see people who are domestic students who've joined us, as well as students who are international. So welcome to all those students. I'm going to focus my comments predominantly on our domestic process. And what I would say is make sure that you apply for financial aid. Many families make assumptions about, I'm not going to qualify, or my neighbor didn't qualify. You're not your neighbor. And so I would strongly suggest that your family takes the time to apply for financial aid. Another reason is then you are in the process in the case that something happens. And certainly we don't hope that a loss of employment or someone gets ill. But if that does happen, you've already started the process and you're in a much better position for that process. To our friends who are international, currently Notre Dame is need aware for our international students. And so our process is outlined on our website for our international students. And those students need to determine upfront whether or not they want to apply for financial aid or whether or not they have the resources to pay. For our domestic students, we are completely need blind, meaning that you are admitted to the university based on your academic achievements, the holistic review that we do, and not whether or not your family has the resources to pay for college. The process that Notre Dame uses is a little bit different than some colleges and universities, especially if you're looking at four-year public institutions. We use two financial aid applications. We use both the CSS profile, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, and we use the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. So that is the application that all colleges and universities will use, is the FAFSA. The CSS profile is used by about 200 schools across the country and also some scholarship organizations. So if you look at the College Board website for the CSS profile, you'll be able to find out who, in addition to Notre Dame, requires that application. The other thing that we use through the College Board and through that CSS profile website is what's called iDoc. It's an image and documentation service that allows you to upload supporting documents that the schools predominantly that use the CSS profile, we're all going to ask for a lot of the same things. And so rather than uploading, say, something like a tax return to all the different schools you might apply to, you upload it into one secure portal. So again, we use the two applications for our financial aid process. And the normal time that families are going to start applying for financial aid. So if the student is going to be a senior in high school during 24-25, you're going to apply starting in October. And I'm going to talk about that now. So again, the FAFSA is the core application. And this year for 24-25, you will be using as a family 2022 income information. The asset information that's reported on the FAFSA is as of the time you complete the application. So income from 2022 and assets the time you complete the application. The federal process is changing because of what's called the FAFSA Simplification Act. Because of that, the FAFSA is going to be available in December of 2023. In the past, it was October 1. For this year, and we think it's this year only, it will be in December. We don't have a more specific date to share it with you because the U.S. Department of Education has not made that announcement as of yet. For the CSS profile, again, another application that is done online. And we choose to use this because it is a much more robust data set of information. It tells us a lot more about who's in the family, how many people are in college and where are they going. It gives us 3 years of income information. So for many families, maybe 2022 information for income is not the right picture. And that's what we're trying to do, is take a picture in time of what family resources are. The CSS profile, also provides to us 2023 information as well as a projection of 2024 information. The CSS profile also gives us the opportunity to receive information from a family like, are there major medical expenses that a family might have? And they can put that right on the application. There's a question about that. Maybe a family is paying private tuition for a younger sibling. Right on the application, the family can report that. There's also in the CSS profile a special circumstances. And so if there's more, maybe some of what we see sometimes is there's extended family support, or maybe there's educational loan debt. So again, the CSS profile can provide us with much more information right up front than what the FAFSA can. Again, we're talking predominantly about what the process would be for a senior in high school. And so this application process for financial aid is really designed for that student who will be a senior during 23-24, who plans to enter in the fall of 2024. The CSS profile is going to be available October 1. So families can complete that application, and then once the FAFSA is available from the Department of Education, then complete the FAFSA application. So again, international students, I'm seeing some questions about that. This process that I'm describing with the FAFSA and the CSS profile for domestic students, this is specifically for domestic students. Again, the information for our international applicants is posted on our website. There is an international CSS profile application. We suggest you do that if you want need-based aid. And there also is what's called a financial statement that is completed by some families for international. But the FAFSA really is for our domestic population. In terms of just giving some defining, what are we talking about when we say need-based aid? So we're determining financial need through these applications, through the FAFSA and the CSS profile. The non-need-based aid is just what it sounds like. It is not based on financial need. It is based on things like academics, a special talent, maybe musical talent, athletics, or leadership. So other schools outside of Notre Dame often have significantly more merit aid or non-need-based aid than the University of Notre Dame. We have very limited merit aid. So the predominance of our aid is based on this demonstrated need. This year, we'll spend over $200 million in need-based aid for our undergraduate students, with the median scholarship being about $55,500. So certainly the offers of need-based aid, some families don't qualify and some families receive our full cost, which is beyond tuition fees, room, and meals. So when we think about paying for college, I suggest that you think about it comprehensively on each year. So the direct costs would be things like tuition, fees, if the student's living on campus, room and meals. Those are the things that the student is going to get a bill for from the Office of Student Accounts. And then students, no matter where they go, are going to have what's called indirect costs. Things like personal expenses, paying for football tickets, joining a club, attending a dance, going out for dinner off campus with friends, going to movies, those kinds of things. Transportation, getting to and from the Notre Dame campus to your home. We use a variable transportation allowance, because we know that it costs more for a student who is going to come from California than a student who's coming from Indiana. So we take that into account as we put together our financial aid offers. We also know that students need to buy books and supplies, things like a laptop computer perhaps. So we look at that comprehensive cost of attendance as we put together our financial aid offers. You can see here what our comprehensive costs are estimated for the upcoming academic year. And again, there's that placeholder for transportation in this allowance here based on a median of all of our students who are enrolling at Notre Dame. So to determine financial need, we take that cost of attendance that I just showed, and we subtract that family contribution that is calculated from the CSS profile to determine eligibility for our University of Notre Dame need-based scholarships. Just some examples, and this is really about helping you to understand that that sticker price or the bottom line is not always your least expensive option. And I think that's one of the most confusing things. Families cross off opportunities before they've actually explored. So I prepared this slide so you could see that that public university has a lower price tag at the top than the private university. I made up a contribution of $5,000 each, and you can see at one school there is a financial need of $20,000 and the other is $75,000. Then the question is, does the school meet demonstrated financial need? And that's an important question for you to ask. And again, whether they do or they don't, it doesn't mean the school is better or worse. It's about resources. So at Notre Dame, we meet demonstrated need. We are very blessed that we have the resources to do so. So in the example on the screen here, you see Notre Dame and the financial need the student had, and we offer a financial aid decision that meets that full demonstrated need. That might be all scholarship. It might be a combination of scholarship and what we would call self-help, work and loan. But at the end, we meet that full demonstrated need for each family. As I said, some schools don't have the resources to be able to meet the demonstrated need. So again, in this, we see what the need is, and the school was able to offer assistance. Again, it might be merit aid, it might be need-based aid, it might be loan or work. Could be a combination of those things. But they weren't able to meet full demonstrated need. And so in essence, what happens to the family is that unmet financial need is added back to the family's share that is calculated through the financial aid application process. And so that's why it's important for you to apply at each school to find out, because again, the sticker price is not always what a family is going to actually pay. One of the things that I noticed, we are welcoming some students who might be sophomores, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors to our program today. One of the things you might do is think about using what's called a net price calculator. So the federal law requires that all schools have a net price calculator on their website, and it's usually on the financial aid website. What that net price calculator is going to do is you're going to put in your family information, and the calculator is going to estimate what your family share is, and then what an offer of financial assistance might be based on the information that is collected. As I noted on the slide, this is a tool, it's not a final answer, because Notre Dame, again, we're looking very holistically at a student once they're admitted. So we're going to take into account for our need-based aid all of the academics, the leadership, the rigor, everything that that student has done is going to be considered for Notre Dame assistance. So try that net price calculator on Notre Dame's website. We also have a tool called My Intuition. It's a much shorter tool, but gives in essence a very similar outcome as the net price calculator. So it seems there's some confusion in seeing chat going by very quickly here. I didn't say Notre Dame didn't have any merit aid. We do have merit aid, but that is not the primary focus of the Notre Dame programs. The merit scholarships are a part of the Notre Dame admissions process. So currently our admissions application is used as the first point of applying for merit aid, and then students are recommended to move forward in a merit scholars process. And neither admissions nor financial aid are choosing the merit scholars. If you're interested in learning more about the merit scholarships that are available at Notre Dame, there is a Merit Scholars website. If you just type in Merit Scholarships at Notre Dame or meritscholars.nd.edu, you should find the Merit Scholars office and the opportunities that are available. Again, there's not currently a separate merit scholarship application. It's part of the admissions process. So again, and at Notre Dame, merit scholarships and need-based aid can coexist in a financial aid offer. It's not one or the other. It could be a combination of both merit assistance as well as need-based scholarship assistance. So just a very quick review of terms. At Notre Dame, we use the term scholarship or grant interchangeably. So scholarship at many places will often mean that there is an additional criteria like merit, like athletic talent, like leadership. Here, we're using it interchangeably, predominantly describing our need-based scholarship program. We also have what we call our Provost Scholarship. Again, all admitted students who apply for need-based aid and demonstrate need are eligible and are considered for the Provost Scholarship. Those range from $2,500 to $7,500, and the intent of those scholarships is to eliminate or reduce self-help. Self-help being loans or work. So while we don't have an across-the-board posted no loan policy currently, the reality is many of our students are not receiving loans as part of their financial aid offer. Some are receiving only work. Some do receive loans. Even in schools where there are no loan policies, families often are choosing to use student loans as a tool to finance educational expenses. So again, I think that you need to understand some of these terms and whatnot. So here are some ideas for you that you might look at for private scholarships. So again, I always encourage students to think about what other financing options are there beyond what the school might be able to offer. A tool I'd strongly suggest is Big Future, which is part of collegeboard.org, especially for those who are looking that are younger than seniors, but not too late for a senior. Big Future has a wonderful college planning tool in it. And part of that planning tool also earns the student opportunities to earn scholarship. And I know at Notre Dame, we've had students who've earned up to $45,000 that they have won through the Big Future website because they've done things through the Big Future site that helped prepare them for college. So again, I would look to that particular tool. Others that I have found reputable over time would be scholarships.com, FastWeb, Scholarship. I'm not as familiar as Scholarship Owl as I am the others, and then CapEx. Another good place is your local area. Hopefully your high school guidance office also is going to be another good tool for you to find out about those private scholarships. And now I'm going to turn it back to Matt, and he's been taking notes. I've been trying to look at information as well as we've been flying by questions.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of questions out there. I think you've answered several of them during your presentation, but if a student applies and is found eligible for need-based aid for their first year, does that automatically renew in future years, or what is the process with returning students?
Sure, that's a great question, and thank you for asking. So need-based scholarship assistance, and even loans or self-help, you apply on an annual basis. Mm-hmm. So we don't anticipate that a student's offer is going to change unless there's been a major change in family circumstances. A major change could mean more aid. It could mean a parent lost a job, or maybe there was a divorce or separation. So it could be for Notre Dame a loss of a member in college or one going to college. So it is an annual application process at Notre Dame. And again, our goal is to try and keep that financial aid offer steady through the 4-year period that a student is attending the university.
Great, thank you. Now, if a student applies for and receives an outside scholarship, how might that affect their financial aid if they were to enroll?
Sure. And this is a great question for families to ask at each school, because it depends. It depends on whether the school meets demonstrated need. So at Notre Dame, as I've described, we meet demonstrated need. So our policy is to reduce self-help, work, or loan if that is in the financial aid package. Since we've met need, it doesn't, I've seen, can it reduce the family contribution? At Notre Dame, that wouldn't be the case because we've already met need. Again, at a school that hasn't met need, it feels like it reduces a family's contribution because the school has already increased that family contribution, so they can do that.
Great. And it looks like we have some QuestBridge scholars out there.
Oh, wonderful.
How is the application process different for QuestBridge students?
Sure. So QuestBridge, for those of you who are out there, I'm not going to go into describing the program. If there are those who don't know what it is, I'd say after the session, Google it, or you can go to our Notre Dame admission website, learn a little bit more about the program. So there is a special QuestBridge admissions application. They're going to use that application for admission, and the CSS profile is what we'll be using to look at all of our Quest scholars who apply. That's under the early action program for admission. We don't consider, as those Quest scholars probably know, is not under a regular decision program. So we anticipate using the CSS profile solely for those matches this year, since the FAFSA won't be available. So we'll make our selections for our matched scholars, and they will be informed on the normal time frame that QuestBridge does in the fall. Usually by mid to late November is when those notifications go back out to the student. I know there was also, I might as well answer the question, because there was a question earlier, does Notre Dame anticipate our admissions decisions being delayed because of the delay in the FAFSA? The answer to that is no. Admissions decisions at Notre Dame still are planned on the same time frame that we have posted on our website.
Great. We had a couple questions about determining eligibility for a student, and if a student has a sick parent, how that might play in our determination of aid?
Sure. So at Notre Dame, through that CSS profile application, we would encourage a family to share that information right on the profile. It's specifically a question. The application, being the profile, will ask medical expenses that were unreimbursed for 2022 and then 2023. And then there also will be a section called the change in circumstances or special circumstances on the profile where more detail can be provided. We're going to consider that information directly in our first review of the application if you've shared that information. Let's say that kind of change or a change in income occurs after the profile or the FAFSA is completed. We have out on our website a very specific section called change in circumstances because we know the reality is circumstances do change. So families can follow that process as well if circumstances change after initial applications for financial aid are submitted.
Great. We just got a question from Sandra who's asking whether it's better to apply for financial aid in early action or regular decision. Is there a difference?
There isn't, Matt. Whether or not the student, again, I think what the student needs to think about is whether or not early action admission is the right program for them to apply under. And that's really a question to direct towards your admissions counselor and or your high school counselor. And it's really what's going to give you the best admissions application picture for our admissions team in terms of will you get more or less financial aid applying early action or regular. At Notre Dame, there is no differential between the two programs.
Okay.
And we completely meet financial need that is demonstrated under either program. No difference.
Great. Now, for students who are coming from maybe a divorced family, how does our office look at coming up with a contribution for those students?
Sure. And Notre Dame does believe in looking at that divorce separated family. We're not making a divorce separated family, just like we're not making married parents contribute. That's a family discussion. But in terms of what we ask is that families who have experienced a divorce or are separated, the family, the parent, this is for the CSS profile, the family with whom the student is living with would complete the CSS profile application. And the non-custodial parent, we would be asking that non-custodial parent to complete the non-custodial profile. We also know that in some of our families, that biological parent may not be connected to the family. We also have a process on our website for those families for whom they are no longer connected to that biological parent. So we try to use common sense, fairness and equity, as well as empathy as we approach those contributions. And again, if we evaluate a contribution and suggest a contribution from a non-custodial parent, that's really a conversation with the family. That is not a Notre Dame conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary. If a family does not qualify for need-based aid their first year, is it possible for them to qualify in future years if the situation were to change?
Sure, great question. Yes, it is possible for a family to qualify in future years. So again, Notre Dame will continue. So one of the changes I alluded to is the federal world is changing. One of the things that will be eliminated with the FAFSA, there will no longer be a differential. The question will be asked, how many people will you have in college? But the federal formula will no longer consider that as a divisor. So, and what we call family contribution is also going to change to student aid index. So I'm not going to dwell on those things in this presentation here, but just know that there are some major changes coming in the federal world. And those are good consumer questions, along with this one, to ask each school. If they're FAFSA only, what are you going to do when there's only one in college if I started with two? So at Notre Dame, we're going to use the CSS profile with the institutional methodology. And so let's say the students started and they were the first in college And the second year, they're going to have 2 in college. Notre Dame is going to consider that second in college, and we would anticipate, assuming all else was relatively equal, like income, we would anticipate that there could be need-based financial assistance then with that second member in college.
Great. At Notre Dame, over 70% of students here will actually go abroad at some point during their 4 years. How does financial aid adapt to that?
Sure. Great question. And Matt's a great resource for this too, because he leads this in our office. So the basic answer is we want students to be global in their experience at the university. And so we will increase the cost of attendance, recognizing that there's probably higher airfare, there's a difference in study abroad, paying for excursions or something like that. So we increase that cost, and therefore we're going to increase our university scholarship first. And let's say they didn't have a loan, we may offer a loan within that opportunity for that student to consider. But we want students to be able to go abroad, and so we recognize that as we prepare the aid offer.
Great. I kind of want to go back to the non-custodial parent question before, because we have a question about what if the non-custodial parent is a danger to the student?
Sure, and unfortunately we see that. So that would be, again, we have what's called a non-custodial parent statement. It's a waiver form. And frankly, many of the schools who use the CSS profile, we agreed to come up with this kind of form just for this kind of circumstance. And so the custodial parent would complete that waiver request and just share with us that there is a danger, maybe there were police reports or whatever. So again, that's where we bring our common sense and our empathy, and we would waive that application.
Great. Is there a specific income limit that a family might have that put them out of range for financial aid? Or is that something that we can give out to a family? Is it that easy?
So one of the things I would suggest, number one, I would say, I think there's reasonableness. If you're making $2 million, you're probably not going to be eligible for need-based aid. But with that said, I think what we're finding is families who are making $300,000 and $400,000 who have multiple students in college are demonstrating eligibility for some need-based aid at Notre Dame. And part of that is relatable to our costs. What I would suggest is go to our net price calculator or to the My Intuition and run your numbers. See what you find there. Again, they're tools, they're not final answers. So complete the application and you can find out. We try again to look at each family, like admissions reads holistically, and you tell them your story. What we're asking you to do, especially through the CSS profile, is to tell your family financial story. I know that's unnerving. You're telling some of the things that you never share with others, but the more information that you can share with us, tell us your story. So again, maybe we don't see any savings. Maybe it's during COVID, you spent everything you had just to keep going. Those are kinds of things that we want to take into consideration in our review. And so we look at a home. A home in California is very different than a home in South Bend. So we try to look very closely at the context in which a family lives and the story that they have lived over a period of time. So while it's theoretically a snapshot, we're also trying to take a look over time and look at any special circumstances like the medical. I know something just came in about deceased parent. Again, trying to look with empathy, compassion, reasonableness at all those situations.
Great. Now, if a student were to go out and qualify for several outside scholarships, is that something that could affect aid in future years? Is it considered income that the student?
Sure. So there's a couple questions in there. In terms of their aid in future years, it depends if they're renewable. And we are by law required to include scholarships, outside scholarships, as part of a financial aid offer. The taxability of financial aid, the current federal laws, any gift money, whether regardless of source, so federal, state, institutional, private, if that amount exceeds the cost of tuition, fees, books, and supplies, the amount over that value is taxable income. But it's also then subtracted in the financial aid process. So it could be taxable income, but we have a means to eliminate it from need-based aid consideration.
Great. Notre Dame itself is test optional. This is a question from the very beginning. Is the SAT or ACT required to apply for financial aid at Notre Dame?
Absolutely no. Tests are optional. And frankly, test scores are not used at all in the financial aid review. We are not looking in financial aid at the individual's application for admission, anything about them, whether it be test scores or rigor or anything like that. So we are not looking at test score or whatever as part of our review.
And are there any merit scholarships available for international students?
International students are considered for our merit scholarships. There are some specifically that have been available for students in China, but there are also the merit scholarships like the Hesper-Gusko Scholarship is a merit scholarship that's certainly admitted international students. So all admitted students are considered for our merit scholarships.
Great. And one that just came in is, how accurate is the net price calculator? Are there any times when it may not be as accurate as it might be in other situations?
Sure. So data entry is certainly an important part, and making sure that you've read the question and answered it accurately is important. Like I said, it's a tool. It's not a final answer. An example, in the net price calculator, you're going to be asked for the fair market value of your home and debt. Well, the net price calculator doesn't do what Matt and I do, and that's to look at the context and say that home we shouldn't count 100% or shouldn't count it at all or whatever. So the human interaction with the data is not there. It's strictly formula driven. So it's a tool. It's not the final answer. And no, it is not for international students. I've seen that question about 10 times at least. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think a good way to finish this up today would be, can you again just say, when should students start thinking about applying for financial aid? And
Sure.
again, what are the basics for what needs to be done to apply for it at Notre Dame?
Sure. We're looking at October 1 is when the CSS profile is going to be available. That is the core application that we use for all of our need-based financial aid. And worst comes to worst, we actually get with that an estimate of federal aid eligibility. So by statute, the feds have to have these FAFSA up by December 31, 2023. So in December, that FAFSA will be available. So October 1 is the earliest you can start to apply for Notre Dame financial aid. We wait until we receive notice of admission. So that's the earliest, but you don't have to do it the day that application opens. All of that information is out on our website, what applications we're using, the documents that we would need. I think that's what you asked me, right?
Yeah. Just the FAFSA and the profile.
The FAFSA and the profile are the two. Again, all of this is out on our website. This recording will be posted in a day through the admissions.nd.edu. And I know we didn't get to all of your questions, but a lot of the questions that you've asked also, if you type in those subjects, are reviewed on our website, and we invite you to visit there and email our office, call our office, ask your admissions counselors. They are well trained to answer some of these questions as well.
Great. Thank you, Mary.
Sure. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for joining us today. We had a lot of fun, and I hope you found it informative. So
We look forward to working with you in the year ahead.
Yep. Go Irish.